1 year after exceeding expectations, Billy Napier remains in Gainesville with one of the best players in college football, one of the most up-and-coming players in college football, and DJ Lagway, a guy that has a lot of potential and has a lot of pieces around him. Can Florida do it again and do even more in 2025 and be a dark horse for the college football playoff? We'll see what happens. Welcome on in to SEC Live here at the Voice of College Football. I'm your host, as always, Lucas Hill. Follow me on X at Lucas_Hill23. We are live every Monday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. Joining me is Hightop Dave's very own Hightop Dave himself, David Soderquist, covering all things Florida football and recruiting. Dave, good to see you, my friend. How are you today?
Good, man. It looks like the weather's cooled down here a little bit here in North Georgia, man. I actually stepped outside today. It was actually a little chilly. So I don't know what's going on with the weather. But as far as everything else and I guess the weather you would call it in Gainesville during the offseason, there's a lot of offseason drama with the quarterback I'm sure we'll get into. But, with everything, the way that it's looking and what we've been hearing at a fall camp so far, I think the Florida Gator fans are braced for a good season if the Florida team can stay healthy.
Yeah, the heat index here is going to stay in the hundreds until we get to the middle of September in Baton Rouge. So nothing's going to change from here on out. But Dave, let's get to immediately previewing Florida this year. Everybody knows what happened last year. Expectations very low. Expectation is that Napier's going to be gone at the end of the year, maybe even before the season ends. Boom, you pop off on a couple games, and DJ Lagway ends up taking over the job from Graham Mertz. Does extremely well throughout this season. A lot of high expectations for him going into 2025. You were around a lot last year. I talked with a couple Florida guys that said that he was probably going to be gone before the UCF game or after. What was the change from at the beginning of the season with everybody saying Napier is done to pretty much at the end of the year? Was it all just based on what happened with recruiting DJ Lagway?
Yeah, actually, what was funny is a lot of that stuff even got started week one. If you remember week one, did not go the way it wanted it to. It looked awful all over the field. You probably had one of the worst defenses you were up against backfield-wise and still couldn't score but 17 points. You get trounced 41-17. There was a lot of boosters angry. There was a lot of former players voicing their opinions as well. But of
they
course,
had somebody that was so pissed off he was eating at Denny's.
Yeah. Yeah, it was bad. I remember leaving that game and getting some phone calls about it, and I was just like, oh, I don't know what they're going to do. And then, you get towards that UCF game, you get towards like some of the middle stretch of that schedule, and you're hearing a lot of rumors about Lane Kiffin, and you're hearing a lot of rumors about some other coaches. So, like, you still have in your mind, like, hey, look, they're looking for coaches right now. They're looking to replace Napier right away. Come to find out, during the middle of the season, they made a switch and said, look, we're going to give Napier one more year. And unfortunately, they announced it at the wrong time, because this was the time where Lagway hurt his hamstring against Georgia and they're playing Texas. They're getting blown out. Then they want to announce it during that game. Probably the worst time you could announce that. A lot of Florida Gator fans weren't happy at the time. But, when you watched DJ Lagway come in for a hurt Graham Mertz, you saw the potential in DJ Lagway. You saw where the plays were explosive. Yeah, he would throw a pick or two here because he's a true freshman starting his first year of college. That's pretty normal for a true freshman to throw a couple of picks. Some of them were deflected ones. We get it, but still it happens. But you see the potential in him, and maybe some of those guys, and I don't know what really happened in that meeting room with boosters and with the board of directors or anything like that. Maybe they saw the potential and said, hey, look, he's still got Lagway here. Let's see what he can do with Lagway the rest of the season, and maybe we hold off on that decision until the end of the year, even though they did announce that they were going to plan to retain him anyway. We already know how that goes. I think there's been so many coaches, they say they plan to retain, and they still get rid of him at the end of the season anyway. So I think maybe there was a change of mind right there. I remember getting a call saying there was going to be a board of directors meeting, but it wound up not being a board of directors meeting at all, and I think ESPN put that out there too. But they ultimately decided to give Napier another year. And sure enough, man, Lagway steps in there. You have the game against Georgia where he went down, and you always wonder, like, man, if he wouldn't have went down, they were up 10-0. What would have happened that game? He goes down after Texas. He comes back to play LSU pretty much almost on one leg. He was still hurt when he was playing, and he wanted to play. They had to sit him down out of that Texas game. They told him you can't play the Texas game. He wanted to play that injured. You go into the LSU game, can't really move, not mobile, and LSU got pressure that game. And hats off to their D line, and their O line was playing really good that year as well. Lagway was able to just find open receivers and thread that needle anytime he was pressured and keep Florida in that game. And you pull that game off. You go into Ole Miss, obviously a top 10 team. You beat them as well. And a lot of Gator fans, and you're starting to wonder, like, what would the season have been with DJ Lagway if he was just starting week 1 all the way to here? We possibly could be in a playoff. I mean, you go look at the Tennessee game where, you had so many chances to put Tennessee away, but you kept shooting yourselves in the foot. What would have happened if Lagway was out there? I think a lot of fans, they go back and forth with it and saying, like, look, we're returning everybody this year. Can it be what we thought it could have been last year? I think that's the biggest question. But I think that is what really was the ultimate decision, and the board of directors and everybody kind of like not pulling that trigger and just seeing him waiting and see how the season would unfold, which I think was a smart idea in retrospect. Like at the time I was upset about it, but then when you look at it, it's like, okay, well, you might have something here with DJ Lagway. And do you really want to break up that team chemistry, bringing in another new head coach and starting all over again for, I think, like the 4th head coach that you've hired since Urban Meyer in like 2 to 3 to 4 years back to back? So I think it was a decent and it was a good decision, but we'll just have to see what happens this year, year 4, when you've got all your pieces on the roster.
Do you think that Scott Strickland made this announcement when he looked at that 24 class and then we looked at that 25 recruiting class for high school?
Yeah, I think that was part of the decision as well. I know Napier has a really good relationship with a lot of those guys in the administration of the board, but obviously you want wins, right? The relationships don't matter if you ain't winning games. I think that was part of it. I think a lot of things had to go into that. I mean, you really didn't have a school president at the time. We're still searching for a school president at this moment, but I think, maybe Scott Strickland, he sat down, and I know Gary Condren, one of our biggest boosters, was part of that decision as well. He sat down with Scott Strickland and I guess they had talked something out or whatever, and they decided to keep him. But as far as like the details of maybe what was this ultimate deciding factor behind it, I couldn't really tell you, but I know that when I've talked to some of the guys behind the scenes, and they would say, hey, look, they're going to give him the whole year and see what he can do with DJ Lagway. And unbeknownst, you go 6-0 when he was starting the full game. When he finished the game, he goes 6-1 when he's out of the game. He gets hurt, but still, I mean, that goes to show you that, like, you have an elite quarterback behind center now. Can you keep him protected? Can you keep him healthy throughout this year? I think that's going to be the key for Florida having a good season as opposed to maybe another average season.
When you look at that receiving core, I think it's one of the best in, probably one of the most up and coming in the SEC. I wouldn't say really the best, but I think it's an opportunity and one that I could say that definitely could rival, programs that you see right now in their receiving core, like Georgia's, like what LSU's got. I could definitely see something like that. Talk to me about how they've evolved, obviously, with Trey Wilson coming back from injury. You brought in a lot of guys through high school recruiting that are going to be really good. How have they evolved with the chemistry with him and DJ Lagway?
Coming out of camp, what I've heard, I mean, the chemistry obviously has improved. He's had a whole year to kind of get familiar with his wide receivers. Of course, he did not throw during the spring camps and all that. He still was nursing a shoulder injury at the time, so they were taking better precaution with it. But I went to the spring game. I know it wasn't televised. Lagway obviously wasn't playing in that game, but I mean, Dallas Wilson, man. I mean, that kid is a star, man. He tied a spring game record of receiving yards. I think he had 6 receptions for 195 yards. Set some other record. I can't remember what the record was, but you just saw the pure talent. Now and I will say this, there was a lot of 2s and 3s on the field, and that's usually how they do some of those spring games, just to not risk some injury to some of these players. But still, even with the 2s and 3s on the field, he looked vastly impressive, like one of the best wide receivers we've had in a while. And he's just a true freshman. So everybody's excited about Dallas Wilson. You got Vernell Brown also coming in. That was in that class, Nashawn Montgomery. And of course, you have J. Michael Sturdivant coming over here from UCLA. I think the biggest thing that I take away from the wide receivers, and now I will say that, losing Shamir DK and Elijah Badger, that was a hit that you got from the portal. But I would say that bringing in J. Michael Sturdivant, Eugene Wilson returning, You got Aiden Mazzell, who's also a speedy wide receiver. He's returning as well. You've gotten some experience with that wide receiver unit, and some of that is not experienced, but a lot of, I would say 30% of that wide receiver room is experienced, but the talent that you have is just unreal. You got Jeray Hawkins, 4.2 guy. You got a lot of 4.3 guys, a lot of 4.4 guys, highly rated 5-star, 4-star guys, and a lot of weapons and a good arsenal for a quarterback that has shown that he can deliver the football, especially deep downfield. Of course, he has to work on his intermediate routes every now and then, but as far as delivering the football deep downfield with a quarterback like that and the talent that you got at receiver, that's got to make you excited. I mean, you go to I don't know if you're a big fan of PFF. You look at DJ Lagway's statistics on his deep routes, on the 20 plus passes deep. He's got like a 96 grade, or it's in the 90s, top 90s. If he can get more familiar with the route tree and some of the other things and some of the concepts that they got in that offense, of course, we've seen him throw slants before. We've seen a couple of those in the Miami game. We've seen some intermediate routes from him, some intermediate passes. So I think that's what the fans are really kind of looking for, is like, hey, can he really just like, get us a 10-yard slant, 15-yard slant? And so far, when you've seen it, when he's done it, he's been pretty accurate and he's got it to the guys. And I think that, learning the offense with these weapons and of course, you have tight ends, which is really something they don't really use in this offense. They use them more for the blocking and the run game in this offense, this RPO that they run. I think with, Hayden Hansen coming out and making some plays downfield, I think he made one in that LSU game for like 20 yards or so. I think when you got those tight ends evolving, you got wide receivers with talent, you brought in some guys from the portal. I think that could be a really good glue that you could have for your offense if DJ Lagway stays healthy and he, I guess, returns in more of an experienced form, I guess, in year 2. But everything I've heard out of camp says, so far so good, but that was more on the injury front. We haven't really heard much of like the familiarity with the receivers. But I will say in year 2, you hear a lot of stuff from the wide receivers we've interviewed, and they say that the chemistry is great and they love Lagway and they're rallying behind him. So I think that's something that's good news for a Florida Gator fan if you're one of those guys that's worried about that.
I have Jaden Ball number 2 on my top 10 running backs in the SEC in a year where this is going to be heavily dominated with the option game, in my opinion, with a lot of mobile quarterbacks. Obviously, everybody knows about Lenore Sellers. DJ Lagway is going to bring a lot of speed. John Mateer, Arch Manning, Diego Pavia, Marcel Reed, guys like that. When you look at especially really what you saw in that LSU game where the option game was so impressive. Even when you hold the football for less than 20 minutes, you could see the difference that it makes. And the way that you saw Lagway and Jaden Ball together on option plays. You saw the patience that they had. Letting your old lineman work. Letting them climb up to that back. And then when the time's right, bam, get it out. When you look at this option game and you look at this quarterback running back duo, where would you have them ranked when you compare them to Arch Manning and Trey Wisner, with John Mateer and Jaden Ott, with Lenoris and whoever's going to be your running back at this point with Rasul Faison's situation? When you look at this running back quarterback duo, where do you have them ranked overall when it comes to the SEC? I know it's a hard question, but not only that, how do you think that's what you saw late in the season with those two? Do you think that leads to a more open playbook this year? And will we see more tricks that Rob Sale or Billy Napier is going to pull out of their ass?
Yeah, that's a tough one because like there's so much. I mean, obviously the SEC is loaded with talent. Georgia always recruits very well. Alabama recruits very well. LSU does, so forth and all that. But just seeing what you saw from Jaden Baugh, Jacoby Jackson last year when he had to come in. I mean, I think I had a stat here that says Jacoby Jackson, he didn't play much at the beginning of the year, but when he was playing towards the end of the year, he averaged 66.7 yards per game, which is pretty good, especially when you're coming in from a JUCO route to the SEC. You add in a quarterback, and you got to think, Billy Napier never really had a true dual-threat quarterback. Maybe his first year he had with Anthony Richardson. And Graham Mertz, yes, he was a runner. He could escape. He had the escapability, but let's not say he was running 4.5s and 4.4s all over the field. This wasn't a true dual-threat quarterback. Now you have a true dual-threat quarterback with an arm. that can, make the defenses account for the run from the quarterback or the run from the running back. And I think that's what really helps out this offensive line, getting guys down the field. Now, you talk about that option play, and I remember that option play from that LSU game where I think it was Jacoby Jackson it was Jaden Ball that took off for 50, 60 yards down the field for a touchdown.
I think Jacoby Jackson had a big play in that one too.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I mean, these are two backs that weren't really highly regarded. I think Jaden Ball was a 3-star guy, but he did average 14 yards per carry in high school. You have Jacoby Jackson, who came from JUCO. I think he was one of the higher rated. I think he was the 3rd ranked running back in JUCO when he came to Florida. And these were names that you didn't really hear before the year started. You were hearing other names, and now you get into this season and the plays that they have made. And I would put them, look, and I hate saying stuff like this because I'm a Florida fan and people are going to think I'm a homer, but I put them in the top 3 right now in the SEC, just based on how they've performed, how they've looked, how the explosiveness that you got out of them. But now, I will say there's a loaded running back stable there at Texas. I would probably put them, if you're saying running backs based on talent and some of the guys coming back, I'd put Texas probably up there at number 1. Maybe a Georgia or Alabama or something like that, or even an LSU. LSU they did well in the portal as well. I mean, LSU killed the portal this year, so they're going to be tough too. But I would have them in the top 3 if it were me. And that's probably me being a Disney Gator there. But just from what I've seen and the potential with DJ Lagway and his dual threat capability, and on top of that, you've got your whole offensive line coming back. Jake Slaughter, a first-team All-American. Austin Barber, who had great numbers. I mean, this unit and this offensive line only gave up 9 sacks last year when against like the top pass rushers in the SEC, which is pretty good. Is that going to continue? Do you get that same production from the offensive line? Does it get better? I'm not too worried about Jake Slaughter or Austin Barber or Damian George playing at guard. But you do have a change over there at tackle. You got Bryce Lovett that's came in, and I've heard out of camps that there's sometimes he struggled, but then there were some times where he's made really great plays. He has really great length, but you got to think about the edge rushers he's up against though too. I mean, George Gums really came in on the scene as well, and then you have Jake Woods, who's been making a lot of plays. He's a freshman. He came in from Penn State. He flipped to Florida. He's been making a lot of plays in these scrimmages and all that, and I hear his name a lot. So I think going with this edge group and just I think it's just defense on offense in these games. And I'm not sure who the 1s or 2s are, who's playing with them or anything like that. But I think with this offensive line coming back, the pieces that you got here and DJ Lagway, the running backs, and I've heard the left side of this offensive line's been great in the scrimmages, but just all the pieces that you have coming back and all the accolades that, these guys have already accomplished, and they're getting all these preseason accolades. I think that offensive line, if that offensive line can gel and Lagway can stay healthy, this offense is going to be dangerous. It's going to be explosive.
I really like where this offense is. I think they're one of the more complete offenses in the SEC right now. I think with what you've put together, the portal-wise and what you did with getting a guy like Dallas Wilson. When I saw that they got him back in, when was it, January that they managed to flip him, or was it on that?
Yeah, it was January. I believe he ultimately committed to Oregon, and then he asked out of his NLI and wanted to come back to Florida.
That's what I figured. But whenever I saw what Florida was able to do with Dallas Wilson, I immediately went live and said that this was going to be a move that I think is going to impact Florida in a big way, more than what people can imagine. I looked at where Dallas Wilson's film. I looked at what you have in him. I look at the speed, the breakaway speed that he has when he gets to that second level. I would say that he's probably one of the biggest threats as a freshman in college football. I'm really excited for that Baton Rouge matchup. If he's playing on the outside with him and DJ Pickett, you're looking at two future first-round draft picks going at it on the outside. That's a scary thing to look at when you talk about what they've been able to do.
If they're both healthy by that game, that's going to be the matchup right there. That's the matchup everybody's looking for.
That's going to be on. If you're a young DB or a receiver watching this, you need to watch those two.
Yeah.
Because you look at the technique, you look at how both of these two play, and you look at the offenses and the coaches that coach them in their specific position. You're talking about two of the best that are going to be in When are they going to be eligible? Help me out here, Dave. Is it 28 or 29 that they'll be eligible for the draft?
Fresh. Yeah, I would say it was 28, 29. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm bad with math, but yeah, I know they're both young. They're both freshmen, so it'd
Right.
be like 28, I would believe. Like, because some of them don't go their junior year, they stay the senior year. But like the thing with NIL, it's tricky because like a lot of kids that could go to the draft, say like Jake Slaughter could have went to the draft last year if he wanted to. He decided he wanted to stay and come play for Billy Napier. Now you're having a lot of schools pay a lot of NIL money to keep these kids around for their senior years to help them out too as well. So I would say, you could go 2028 or 2027 or something like that, but I would guess it would be 2028.
Definitely going to be both to look at. Let's talk about the defense as well. Obviously, you lose a couple of guys on there. You obviously lose Desmond Watson to the draft. You lose Jack Pyburn, who's now at LSU. Your linebacking core is kind of depleted. Is this an Achilles heel that we need to look out for Florida in 25? How have they been so far throughout spring?
Linebacker core is actually one of the bright spots. I know that you're lacking experience with those guys leaving. You do have Pup Howard that is coming back there, middle linebacker. You have Miles Graham, a guy that I don't know if you watched the Tulane game, and I know they weren't playing against Tulane's big, stacked team or anything like that. A lot of those players opted out, and a lot of people weren't playing, but I mean, Miles Graham played really well that game, had great vision.
I think I have Miles Graham as a guy that I think can break out this year. Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then you got Aaron Giles there too as well. I mean, this kid he made a lot of good plays in the Under Armour All-American game too. He's made plays through high school, another top 100 linebacker. As far as talent-wise at linebacker, I mean, Jaden Robinson's another guy you got to look out for. Ty Jackson, Miles Johnson, those kind of guys. But I mean, like Florida has talent. They don't have, I guess you would say, game-ready experience because I think Miles Graham only played in a few games last year, and Aaron Giles played in a few games. But I would say, like talent-wise at linebacker, I wouldn't put that as like the most like the team that the position that scares me the most. What I'm really scared about too is corner. And I'm not saying that we don't have talent at corner or anything like that, but Devin Moore, he comes back. That's a guy that's been making plays for Florida, anytime he's been on the field. The problem is he hasn't stayed healthy. He would get hurt. He would be out the rest of the season, and then you're relying on somebody else. You got Jordan Castell back there at safety, but behind him you've got Lagonza Hayward. You got freshmen, Drake Stubbs who could play there too. You have Ben Hanks Jr. who set the interception record, I guess, or some interception record in high school. I mean, these guys are all freshmen, and I think the biggest concern you have with cornerback and maybe even some of that safety room is the depth. Who do you have behind these guys? I mean, Devin Moore, if he goes down, you got Teddy Foster, Jameer Grimsley. These guys are freshmen. Of course, we talk about Cormani McClain, Dazon Johnson. These are younger kind of guys who haven't had much playing time, but they're going to be playing and they're very talented. But is that going to be a detriment to the team if one of those guys goes down? Because who's behind them? You got one more guy that could probably replace somebody. But if that guy goes down, then you're looking at freshmen, maybe some walk-ons, maybe. I mean, it's pretty thin there. I would say the thin part of the defense would be cornerback. And then, of course, you got Aaron Gates coming back. And he tore his ACL last season. He's coming back. He's going to be playing some of that kind of like that safety kind of tweener kind of safety role. But, man, Aaron Gates, when he's on the field, you can tell he's on the field. That kid flies. He picks balls off. I think he almost picked off Carson Beck twice in that Georgia game, picked him off one time. He's all over the field. He's always making plays. And from what I've heard at a camp, he's still, I mean, like even after the ACL surgery, he's moving like he was at old. So I think that's something that Florida Gator fans have something to look forward to. But I would just say backfield wise, but I'm telling you, this defensive line is stacked. It's loaded this year. You with Tyreek Sapp, you're returning sack leader. He had 7.58 sacks last year. You got Jamari Lyons, a guy that a lot of people forget about. He was supposed to be a main contributor last year. He wound up getting hurt and he was out for the season. And of course, Caleb Banks, a guy that's being mock drafted first round, all that kind of stuff. And then you got George Gums at edge, a guy that's been making plays too. You got LJ McCray, big time 5-star guy, hasn't had much playing time, but when he's on the field, too. So I think with the loaded defensive line, especially if the defensive line stays healthy, I don't really think you have to worry about the backfield as much if that defensive line can maintain getting that pressure that they left the end of the season with. But I think there is a little bit of concern there at corner and safety just from a personnel standpoint.
Overall, when you look at this program and I look at the schedule, I have them going 9-3. Let's
Mhm.
say we get to the end of the year. Let's say it's between LSU and Florida. Florida beats LSU. They're both 9-3. And I do expect this to happen. We will see a 3-loss team get into the 12 team, especially with straight seeding now. I think that makes it more likely for a 3-loss team to get in. Between LSU and Florida, depending on what they do, obviously head-to-head is going to matter.
Yeah.
If Florida is able to knock out LSU early in the season, and yet you're both sitting at 9-3, who gets in?
I think it would be Florida just based on their schedule. They have like the nation's toughest schedule. Like some sites have them at number 1, some of them have them at number 2. I like the Kelly Ford rankings. Kelly Ford actually has Arkansas as like the number 1 I guess the difficult strength of schedule. They do some different analytics with theirs, but they have Florida at number 2. Every other side I've seen is number 1. I think they would go off strength of schedule, but I also like it's kind of weird because it also, I think it depends on who you beat too, as well. So, like, if Florida was to lose to LSU, right? But they beat Georgia, they beat Texas, and they both go 9-3. Are you going to keep Florida out of the playoff? Like, beating 2 of the top 5 teams. Now, it depends on what LSU does, though, too. I think that's the determining factor. I don't really think the head-to-head would matter as much depending on who they beat.
It used to. Now it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes it seems like it's a popularity contest for TV ratings as well.
Yeah.
In certain aspects. But yeah, I think it would just depend. Now, like if LSU rattles off some big wins and Florida, like say they lose to Texas and Georgia and they lose to LSU, but they beat everybody else. But LSU, that they beat the main teams on their schedule, you would probably have to put LSU in that category just based on the resume of the teams that they've beaten. And you can look at Florida and say, well, there is more difficulty there, but who did they really beat? Well, you beat Miami, you beat Florida State, you beat Tennessee. I mean, it's like, did you beat anybody of self-worth that could possibly get you into that playoff and make it interesting? I think that would matter as well. So it's actually a really good question because I think if LSU and Florida both face off, I think the head-to-head would matter a little bit. But I also think strength of schedule would matter and the opponents that you beat. So that is a good question. I would put Florida just based off strength of schedule. But if LSU gets better wins than Florida does, there's no rhyme or reason you would take LSU and leave them out of that playoff as well.
Last one for you, David. When you look at the schedule, what is the most important game on Florida's schedule that'll determine what we see from Florida at the end of the year?
Ooh, that's good. A lot of people will say LSU, and I think that matters because that's your first big game. You're away. You're at LSU Stadium. But I think the one that would ultimately decide your season, and based on a mentality standpoint, physicality standpoint, it's going to sound silly here for a second. I think it's going to be the Miami game right after LSU. I mean, if you look at week 1, what they did to you last year, blowing you out in the stadium, planting flags, talking to the recruits. I mean, those kids are going to be fired up for that game. They're going to remember because a lot of people return. They're going to remember what happened. If you go into that game and you lay an egg again against LSU, I mean, I don't even care if it's at Hard Rock. I mean, that might be the determining factor of whether this team is, heading to the glory land and still making it 10-2 or 9-3. Or we're sitting here another 7-5 season because, just nobody can get up for a game or something bad goes wrong or something like that. But I think the most important schedule is something that I guess wouldn't really decide where the schedule goes or where the team goes towards the end. I think the most important game you got on your schedule is Georgia. I mean, this is a team that you haven't beaten since 2020. They're kicking your butt in recruiting. They're stealing your recruits left and right, for the most part, 90% of the time. Kirby says has done some things that to Florida that is kind of like a shot at Florida. He'll do it underhandedly. He won't really say much, but he'll do it underhandedly. But I think that game's really important for you to win, especially with what you got coming back. If Lagway stays healthy, Stockton still got some question marks just because he didn't play a lot last year. So we don't know what you're really going to get from Stockton this year. You might get an elite quarterback or you might get an average quarterback. But I think that game there really would be the most important to me. I actually live here too, so that's probably a little bit biased, but I think that one matters the most because, I mean, you beat Georgia. I mean, recruits are going to look at Florida and be like, oh, wow, they're on the come up now. Maybe I need to go take another look at Florida. And Miami's important too, because that's an in-state battle. And Florida State's an in-state battle for in-state recruits. So I think it would be like Miami, Georgia. But if, as far as from like a morale standpoint, I'd pick Miami. As far as like I guess you want to improve recruiting and you want to show that people that, you know, hey, this is year 4, I'm building this thing. I think Georgia would be that.
David Soderquist, Florida Gators insider for Hightop Sports. You can hit him up on X at Hightop Dave. They are one of the best around Florida, all things Florida football, recruiting, whatever it is. Yeah. David, once again, man, thank you for joining us, brother. Have a great rest of the week, and we are excited for college football season around the SEC to get rocking and rolling.
Thanks, Lucas, man. Appreciate it, man.